And there's supposed to be a little red light. See, you can't really see it from there. You have to bend down over towards the...
Oh. That's great. Good morning. This meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board will come to order. Before we call the roll, I have the privilege and the pleasure of swearing in our newest member, appointed by the Speaker of the California Assembly, and that's Ms. Thea Selby. So I'd like to do that right now before we take the oath so that we can then have a full complement on the board. Okay. Thea? I have to take my glasses off to be able to read. Raise your right hand. This is the oath of office for the California High-Speed Rail Authority. I, state your name.
I, Thea Selby,
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations and welcome. Now I will ask if the Secretary will please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards. Vice Chair Hartnett.
Here.
Ms. Selby. Mr. Rossi. Ms. Shank.
Here.
Ms. Perez Estelano.
Here.
Mr. Henning.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
And Chairman Richard.
Here. Mr. Hartnett, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Join together, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we start, I'd just like to say for the record that that Vice Chair Tom Richards is not here today. He's on family business, and he is quite distraught because I believe this is the first high-speed rail board meeting that he has missed, and he's been pretty proud of his tenure and attendance record up till now. So he's here in spirit. And then before we start, Ms. Selby, welcome. And I don't know if you'd like to just say anything by way of introductory remarks as you join our board.
Thank you, Chairman Dan Richard. I would, first of all, I appreciate the thought, and I want to thank you and to thank the other board members and staff for the warm welcome that I've received here. I also want to thank Senator Kathleen Galgiani and San Francisco Controller Ben Rosenfield, who wrote me letters of support for this position, and thank Speaker John Perez, who appointed me, and especially to thank the Honorable Fiona Ma, my friend and colleague, for her advocacy on my behalf. I think that anybody who knows me knows that I am for high-speed rail, but I have worked, to educate and inform people about high-speed rail. But I am here in a different position, and I am honored to be here as a member of the board. And I feel very deeply the responsibilities of being a board member, which are to help govern this project and to represent the constituencies of the state of California, and that's all of the constituencies of the state of California. And one of the first things I did when I found out that I was appointed was to ask for a tour of the Central Valley. And I did that so that I could listen to the people of the Central Valley, educate myself, and do my best to represent them because they are a very, very important part of this project. I will always strive to listen. I won't always understand, but I will strive to listen and to hear you and your concerns so that we can make the best high-speed rail possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Selby. I appreciate that, and welcome to the board. We will now turn to the first item on the agenda, which, as always, is the approval of minutes of the prior meeting. So I'll ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Move approval.
Somehow I always manage to screw up the thing with the minutes. I don't know how I do that. No, I just want the Secretary to call the roll. No, could we have somebody make a motion on the minutes? Yes, it was moved by Ms. Shank. I was too busy being embarrassed to hear that, and I think it was seconded by Mr. Rossi. All right, now could the Secretary please call the roll?
Certainly. Vice Chair Richards. Vice Chair Hartnett.
Yes.
Ms. Selby.
Abstain.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Ms. Shank,
Yes.
Ms. Perez Estelano,
Yes.
Mr. Henning,
Abstain.
Mr. Frank,
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Yes. Thank you. Now, I'm sorry, we will move on to public comment, which actually should have been first. Before we do, I'd like to just make this remark about the public comments today and the interrelationship between the public comments and the board's later deliberation on the 2014 business plan. We have received a number of comments from the public. I have read, except probably up until last night, I've read all of the raw comments. I know a number of my colleagues have as well. In addition, comments continue to come in, and we will have additional comments today that I anticipate will be pertinent to the 2012 business plan. Now, some of you may wonder, well, how effective can my comments be when you guys are going to vote on this plan later this morning? I've had a conversation with Mr. Morales about this issue, and what I'm going to be recommending to my colleagues is that as we consider and deliberate on the business plan today, that the draft that's in front of us is basically still the same draft that we saw before. And so I think the appropriate thing is for this board to hear all of the comments and reflect on the comments that have been presented to us so far, the ones we'll hear today, discuss the policy issues inherent in this document, and then give direction to the staff to finalize the document in accordance with board policies. So I want to assure all the members of the public today that we take your comments very seriously and that we encourage your further comments today on the business plan so that between now and the end of the month, when the plan must be finalized, that we can incorporate all of this thinking and the board will have the benefit of today. Mr. Morales, do you want to add anything to that? You're on.
Yeah, I would just reiterate, yes, we've received comments on a rolling basis since early February. Those comments have been reflected in the materials that have been presented to the board. They've been made public. And as you noted, the comments heard today will be a continuation of that process, and so we will take whatever direction the board provides based on the comments you hear today as far as incorporating issues, and we'll continue to revise the plan in accordance with that direction in order to submit it then by May 1st.
All right. Thank you. So with that, we'll proceed. Just wanted to give some comfort to people who've come all this way to make comments to the board that we're very serious about hearing from the public on these matters. As is our ordinary custom, we begin with elected officials. However, I know Supervisor Perea is here, and City Council member Chris Murray is not yet here, and so I'm going to move those to the back of the comment period today at their request. So we'll move on and take the comments in the order that they were received. First is, I'm pleased to welcome Chad Edison from the State Transportation Agency. Mr. Edison, good morning. He'll be followed by Dan Levitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the board. On behalf of Secretary Brian Kelly, I would like to thank the High Speed Rail Authority for developing a 2014 business plan consistent with the governor's budget and vision. The 2014 business plan builds on the important foundation laid by the 2012 business plan and by SB 1029, both beginning construction on high-speed rail and unlocking important funding for statewide rail modernization. The bookend investments in Caltrain electrification and the Southern California blended system, coupled with connectivity projects on rail systems throughout the state, are critical to developing an integrated, efficient statewide rail network. The governor's budget proposal and the High-Speed Rail Authority's 2014 business plan continue to lay out a strong vision for getting high-speed rail built. An initial and ongoing commitment of cap and trade funding is critical to ensuring construction of the initial operating segment in a timely fashion. In addition, the governor's budget calls for investing additional cap and trade funds and in the remaining $160 million of Proposition 1B funding in the rest of the state's rail network. All told, the state has appropriated and programmed more than $1 billion to be spent on rolling stock, infrastructure, and positive train control investments that will benefit the state's 3 interregional corridors and the commuter rail services that share them over the next 5 years. A modern, safe rail network with investments in both high-speed rail and existing and emerging rail corridors is a top priority for the state. Finally, I'd like to thank the High-Speed Rail Authority for the efforts made to improve its planning and analysis for travel demand projections, operations and maintenance costs, and benefit cost analysis. Your business plan is strengthened through responsiveness to the peer review panel, advice from domestic and international rail community, academic experts, and federal and state oversight. California needs the benefits that high-speed rail and a statewide integrated rail network offer: reliable, efficient transportation that is environmentally and financially sustainable and that strengthens California's global economic competitiveness. I urge you to continue to listen and be responsive to the feedback you receive from throughout the state and forge the strong partnerships you will need to make high-speed rail best fit into the fabric of our communities and to enhance the state's economy. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to comment on this important transformative project.
Thank you, Mr. Edison, and please convey our thanks also to Secretary Kelly for his continued support and guidance on this. We appreciate it. Dan Levitt, followed by Alan Scott. Morning, Mr. Levitt.
Good morning, Chair Richard and members of the authority. I'm Dan Levitt with the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, and I'm speaking here today on agenda item 4, and I'm here because our Executive Director, Stacy Mortensen, is currently in Washington, D.C. We've made great progress with limited resources since you adopted the updated agreement with the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission in June of 2013. On June 24th, 2013, we initiated the formal environmental process for the improvement and expansion of the existing ACE rail service and the extension of ACE to Merced, where it will connect with the initial operating section of high-speed rail. The extension of ACE is a key component of the Northern California Unified Service and the blended service you've identified in your business plans. The EIS for this effort was initiated in September by our federal partner, the FRA, and scoping was completed in November. Our draft scoping report is available to the public. We've done extensive agency outreach and public outreach throughout the corridor, and last week we presented the initial alternatives to be carried forward throughout the EIS process. We've greatly narrowed down the number of options to be investigated through the environmental work. In the next couple of months, we expect to release initial ridership and revenue forecasts. The San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission respectfully requests your approval of Agenda Item 4 for a 1-year, time-only amendment to the AECOM contract for the Altamont Corridor section so that we can continue this important work. We look forward to continuing our successful partnership with the High-Speed Rail Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. Alan Scott, followed by Frank Oliveira. Mr. Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members of the board. My name is Alan Scott from Kings County. I'm a founding member of the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. This morning I have a number of questions that I know may not be answered, and I understand that. My first question is, where's the beef? Or said another way, where is the money for this project? Does anyone on the board know? What does the term uncommitted funds mean in the 2 boxes in the business plan, one on page 53 and one on 55? Furthermore, I'm not sure I understand the waiver to purchase train sets overseas. It's my understanding the last number of years, beginning with the federal government, that everything that we do is Buy America. And now you're asking for a waiver from the STB or the FRA to purchase train sets overseas with taxpayer dollars. I don't see any union concerns about this, but the other thing is the taxpayers would like you to follow the law. My next question is, are you really sure the draft EIRS, draft EIR, is completed to the letter of the law? Since California ranks number 6 in states where the populace does not trust their government, and by the way, Illinois is number 1, could part of this reason be because of the HRS project and a lot of the issues that are coming up, especially the court cases? Then another thing is, in the Public Utilities Code, Section 185033, 6, or I believe B2 says, the authority shall take into consideration any hearings that the legislature may hold prior to the adoption of the plan. And the question is, did you do that? Because I'm going to close with this statement here. It is my hope the entire board reviews the video of Senator DeSalier's Transportation and Housing Informational Hearing of March 27th, as 4 experts pretty much totally beat up on the business plan, or stated another way, your business plan is not good enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Frank Oliveira, followed by Ross Browning. Good morning, Mr. Oliveira.
Good morning. Frank Oliveira with the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. In my hand, I have a realistic view of the California train project condensed into a packet. Where it has been, where it appears the authority is planning on taking it. In 2008, the California High-Speed Train Project was defined by Assembly Bill 3034, and the resulting Proposition 1A. Since we, the public, lawmakers, and media since then have been saturated by the California High-Speed Rail Authority's promises and marketing campaigns to build something different than what the public agreed to fund. The Sacramento Superior Court has ruled that to be the case. The state has appealed the Superior Court's finding, and we are eagerly ready to defend the court's ruling. The state's lack of compliance with law is non-complex. It's a non-complex matter for the appellate court to review and come to the same finding as the lower court. The authority's 2014 business plan just reinforces how far the California High-Speed Train Project has drifted from what the public authorized by now pursuing critical greenhouse gas revenues that should be used by law to meet the state's 2020 greenhouse gas reduction goals. California Assembly Bill 32 is just another funding law that the authority is prepared to bleed out to justify its continued existence. It is now 2014, 6 years after the passage of Prop 1A. It is time for the authority to eliminate the constant marketing campaigns which are included throughout the authority's 2014 business plan and the rest of your communications. We wish the authority would allow the California High-Speed Train program to stand or fall on its own merit, build what the public voted on, or go back to the voters and ask for their permission to build something different. The concept may be uncomfortable, but it is simple and fair. Do not take limited AB 32 cap and trade revenues and use them to increase the state's greenhouse gas emissions footprint in the Central Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. Next, Mr. Ross Browning, followed by Ms. Diana Lacombe. Mr. Browning.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Richards, members of the board. I'm Ross Browning from Layton, California, down there in Kings County. You know, that little, I love to say this, that little keystone-shaped county down in the middle of the state there. At an assembly hearing in February of last year, a member of your staff was responding to questions about being able to meet speed and time numbers that was posed by an assembly person. The assembly person stated that they would like to see the data that validated these points. Your staff member said that he would send the validation data to the assembly member. A little while later, I thought that I would also like to see this material, so I asked an assembly staffer to send me a copy, which she did. Imagine my surprise when I received this material and found it unsuitable for verification purposes. I called the staffer back, explained the situation to her, and asked if the material had been faxed, as faxes play havoc with graphics and small text. And I also explained to her that this material could not be used to validate any data. Sometime later, I put in a PDR for the material from the authority directly. Again, imagine my surprise when I received the data, and it appears to have been extracted from some report or presentation, but in any case was not readable in a form for verification purposes. These data appears to have come from a runtime simulation program, which is a very basic and elementary computer program dealing with speed, time, and distance. For example, which is to say it's 50 miles to Grandma's house, we're traveling at 25 miles an hour, trip will take 2 hours. This is a tool that engineers use quite frequently to assist them in determining which route and changes in speed can be used to meet various goals. This is a valuable tool that is used in preliminary design phases. It does not yield real or operational data in its current form. This would require performance input data, such as data on a particular train set or consist, load carried, track condition, elevation changes, as well as alignment and any environmental and local ordinances in effect. What does all this mean? For starters, it means that your staff told an assembly member just a little more than a little white lie. It also casts doubt on any numeric data that is issued by the authority. The San Francisco to San Jose portion pencils out at more than 30 minutes, and the San Francisco to Los Angeles run is well over 3 hours. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. Diana Lacombe, followed by Kevin Dayton. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Richard, members of the board, Mr. Morales. I'm Diana Lacombe, president of APAC. I wanted to let you know that I attended the pre-bid and industry forum in Visalia day before yesterday, and I was frankly very surprised. It was perfect. We had great attendance.
I guess that's good.
Yes, it's good. Seems like Diana Gomez and Jose Camarena finally got it. They got it right. We had ample time for networking with the teams and the primes. We had an excellent overview. It was very, very well done. The format was perfect. I just hope that they can continue it as it was. The second item I wanted to mention to you is that I know that you, as board members, received the letter from our attorney regarding bundling and unbundling. It was also sent to FRA. Well, we're looking forward to the response from you, and I hope that the board seriously considers the unbundling of contracts in the future. I think it's very clear that from FRA, it was a directive. It wasn't just a request. So I do hope you take that into serious consideration in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lacombe. Let me just say you hold us to very high standards, and so I'm happy that we were able to do that. And I did read that letter. I'm sure my colleagues read the letter. We'll be discussing that later, so appreciate it. Mr. Dayton, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dayton, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Okay, Mr. Rossi.
You know, I've been on this board now more years than I care to think about. But I've had it with certain things, and I'm just going to say so. I didn't like the analogy to Hitler, and I don't like the thought process that you can, with impunity, step up here and call a staffer a liar. It's inappropriate. It's lacking in civility, and is contrary to everything that is democratic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Mr. Dayton.
Thank you, Kevin Dayton, Labor Issue Solutions in Roseville. I did read the California High-Speed Rail Authority 2014 draft business plan line by line. I found 3 typos and a factual mistake that I did submit in. And after reading it, here are my impressions. First, I saw the vision that's in this, and I saw the potential for a lot of excitement and opportunity. I have to say that I had come in to read it with a very negative perspective, and I left with a very different perspective. I also got the perspective that you and your staff must be frustrated about behind the scenes about all the state and federal mandates that are put on it. My personal feeling is when I look at all the criteria of the business plan, there's really no way you could ever fully comply with this sort of thing, and that's not your fault. The legislature did it. Obviously, a lot that was in there was trying to get the Prop 1A approved and 2008 and trying to show voters that you're following it. I think it's ridiculous, and there's no way you can fulfill these requirements. On the other hand, you have the law and you have to follow it. We just heard somebody from Caltrans say this is consistent with the governor's plan and vision in the business plan. Actually, it has to be consistent with state law. It's not a living document, as been claimed. It's a legal document, and you have to fill this out and fulfill it in order to be eligible for getting funding and continuing with this. I attempted to make a outline here of all the things that the legislature has demanded you to do in the business plan. You're unable to do it. You didn't do it, and essentially the business plan, I don't believe, complies with the law. I don't believe that you can comply with the law. So I'm going to leave you with that and look for you're going to have to look for some options in the future on how to get this going and comply with the law, because you're just not going to be able to do it. It's too difficult. Thank you.
Hang on a second, Mr. Dayton. Let me just ask you this question. Your list there is intriguing to me. Is that something you can provide to us? Are you providing that in terms of comments?
Actually, no. Got all my notes written on this, but you know what? Maybe I should contact the staff and talk about what I discovered in it. Actually, I came up with a bunch of good ideas. I think a lot of them are counterintuitive about how you could turn this around, perhaps, and get the project broadly popular and successful. And a lot of it is related to the mandates that are being put on you by the state and the federal government. So I will contact the authority and see if I can submit some material and maybe talk about some of the things that I've discovered reading this line by line.
I think we'd welcome that. Thank you, Mr. Dayton. Next is Ted Hart, followed by Jason Holder. Mr. Hart, good morning.
Good morning. And thanks for the opportunity to address the board. I always feel good about the fact that you do invite the public. I've submitted 12 more pages of comments concerning the 2014 business plan. I'm only going to hit the first one. In the draft business plan, the draft business plan states, quote, in 1996, the Commission issued a report that concluded that such a project, statewide high-speed rail, was indeed feasible. The Commission went on to say that the high-speed rail project first needed a funding mechanism and that no progress could be made until the voters had approved the funding mechanism, nor could an operating firm be selected. The authority kept the feasible part of the Commission statement and ignored the recommendation that made it feasible. 18 years have passed since the cited statement was made, and during all of this time, the authority has never developed a funding mechanism for building a statewide rail system. So the question is, will the final 2014 business plan tell the public how much the statewide system would cost, when it will be completed, and how will it be paid for? It's kind of like the Jerry Maguire, show me the money. In going back on this, the issue that I have spoken to the board many times on is funding. I just keep coming back to that because without that, it doesn't matter what you have in the business plan. It just can't go forward without the money. At the more recent Senate and Assembly hearings, Mr. Morales delivered information to them. And at the end of, at least at the Senate hearing, the comment was made, and I'll loosely quote, that from the senator that he admired Ms. Morales' optimism. But the question was, where are the factual numbers that provide for the funding? So we have optimism, we have reality. So the approval vote that you're looking at right now is by each of you as individuals. And if you feel that this plan is complete, then fine. But many of us that have looked at it in detail look at it as an incomplete document. And if it is, then I would ask that you not approve it until the funding plan is put in place so that everybody knows what it really is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Jason Holder, followed by Robert Allen. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Richard, members of the board, Mr. Morales. My name is Jason Holder. I'm an attorney from Oakland, specializing in environmental law and land use. And I'm commenting today on behalf of Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability, as well as my own behalf as a father and as a citizen of this state. I appreciate your statement earlier that you would direct staff to revise the document, and I think the document needs to be revised to answer 4 critical and currently unanswered questions concerning the project. And unless and until those questions are answered, the authority will not have the information necessary to make responsible decisions concerning the project. In effect, if it adopts this plan and proceeds with construction, the authority will be gambling, risking a substantial amount of taxpayer funding while causing widespread impacts on resources and communities. The business plan offers the authority an opportunity at a critical juncture to explain how it has addressed some of the most serious problems that have plagued this project. Those problems have cast a pall over the project, but rather than squarely address them, the business plan either assumes them away or glosses them over. First, how much will the project, and more immediately the IOS, really cost to complete? As explained repeatedly in public comments, the business plan substantially underestimates project costs. It does not factor in the full costs for new stations, mitigation for impacts, right-of-way property acquisition, etc. And the plan provides no substantiation for its optimistic estimates for construction costs, in marked contrast to the support for other estimates in the plan. Second, where will the authority get the funding necessary to complete the IOS? The business plan offers only generalized explanations of potential sources for the more than $20 billion in necessary additional funding for the IOS, but it does not provide any indication of the likelihood of this funding. Starting ICS construction before funding for the IOS is secured may not be a responsible decision. But the authority is forging ahead because, in essence, federal funding has become the tail that wags the dog. Third, what will the authority be able to build with available funding? The ICS will need new stations that can be used by Amtrak indefinitely until the IOS is completed. It will also cause significant impacts to wetlands, biological resources, air quality, agricultural lands that will necessitate costly mitigation efforts. Allocating state and federal funding will most likely not be sufficient to complete the entire ICS. Finally, if the authority cannot produce with available funding a usable segment of the project, will all the destruction, dislocation, interference, impacts, and expense be worthwhile? Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. Robert Allen, followed by Jeremy Smith. Morning, Bob.
Last month, I proposed rephasing high-speed rail in Northern California to make it for Phase 1, Merced to San Jose, Phase 2, Merced to Sacramento, Phase 3, San Jose to Oakland, Phase 4, Oakland to Sacramento, Phase 5, San Jose to San Francisco, defer pending plans to upgrade, that's grade separate the Caltrain line. I'm concerned about grade crossings. The high-speed rail should not have grade crossings. And I've given you a copy of the report, Wikipedia account of the 1999 Bourbonnais, Illinois train accident. At that time, the trains were going, the speed limit was 79 miles an hour, the same as it is on Caltrain today. And they had a derailment. The train hit a truck that was loaded with steel at a grade crossing. It was an accident, but they derailed 2 locomotives. They derailed 11 of 14 cars. They killed 11 people. They injured 122. I gave an erroneous figure on the injuries on some of the comments I've made, but it is 122. I'm saying don't allow blended rail where you have grade crossings. You defer that until after the Caltrain line is grade separated, and that you not waste any more, don't scrounge any more high-speed rail money on Caltrain until you can get an assurance that there will be grade separations. We cannot have grade crossings on high-speed rail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Jeremy Smith, followed by Vida Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff for the time to address you today. I'd like to say, first of all, Jeremy Smith with the State Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent 400,000 unionized construction workers in California. I'd like to first of all say thank you for enduring throughout this project, the slings and arrows and bombs that have been thrown your way, some reasonable, some unreasonable. You've pushed forward. You haven't given up. And because of that, you are poised to approve a plan that is going to create thousands of good-paying jobs for construction workers in an area of the state that badly needs that influx of economic activity. You're also going to begin construction on a project with this plan today that is vitally needed. It's a critical part of the state's infrastructure plan. There's going to be 50 million people in this state by 2050. We need this. The LAO itself, the Legislative Analyst's Office itself, said to create the number of freeway miles, airport terminals, and runways, it would cost double this project. We need this to be part of our infrastructure plan in the state. The folks that come up and just say no and obstruct with the intent to kill don't have another plan. And that's unfortunate because this is needed, a needed part of our state's future. And I'd also just like to say we think this is a solid plan. It's been well thought out. And I'd like to thank you for the transparent nature that you have conducted yourself with this plan and coming before the legislative budget subcommittees to talk about your budget and this plan. There's been few projects in this state that have had the spotlight on them as much as this plan has had. And your transparency is much appreciated. And finally, I'll just finish with this. At the last budget subcommittee hearing, for the first time, there was a gentleman there who spoke in favor of the project on behalf of different venture capitalist funds. That was the first time somebody like him had shown up to talk about on behalf of venture capitalists, thanking the governor for the plan to use capital trade money. The money, the private money, is there, and we are on the cusp of getting it, and this plan is going to begin this project and drive the private investment that's needed to finish it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Vida Wright, followed by Roseanne Martinez.
Chairman Richard, distinguished members of the board, good morning. My name is Vida Wright. I'm a resident of California. I'm a small business owner, and I'm also the California Region Vice President for the Society of American Military Engineers. I have attended this board meeting for the last 2 years, and what I have observed is that the public comment section of the board meeting is usually populated by negative comments and assertions directed at California high-speed rail project. But this project has many silent supporters, and I believe it's time for us to speak up. Our state needs this project, not to only modernize our transportation system, reduce greenhouse gases, contribute to the reduction of or increasing air pollution problems up and down the state, but we need this project to provide engineering and construction jobs that are badly needed to lift our economy. We certainly empathize with those who may be adversely affected by construction of this project, and we trust that the authority is doing everything in its power to compensate those impacted in a fair and equitable manner. But without investment in a major infrastructure project, such as high-speed rail, the unemployment rate in California is bound to escalate. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel on February 24th announced that due to budget cuts and troop withdrawals from Afghanistan, the Department of Defense will be laying off hundreds and thousands of soldiers and DoD civilians in the next 2 years. California will get its share of these returning veterans. And without investment in a major infrastructure project that would provide additional job opportunities for everyone, including them, These veterans, these men and women who have served our country, will be joining the long list of unemployed in the state of California. These are men and women who are skilled engineers, technicians, communication experts, and have many other skills that can be put to use to rebuild our aging infrastructure. And I also believe our veterans deserve to return to an environment that provides them with opportunities for gainful employment so they can support their families. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. And I apologize, I slightly mispronounced your first name, but thank you. Roseanne Martinez, followed by Keith Dunn. Good morning, Ms. Martinez.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I'm a woman who is self-employed since 1982 to present. I've had my office for going on over 15 years. My business has been established at a location where all my clients could easily find me. I believe that from the beginning, it was the way this high-speed rail train was presented to me was wrong from the beginning, from the point where I had this person come and he was scaling the price of my property from across the street. He did it without me even knowing what he was doing. I didn't even know what he was doing. He came onto my property illegally. He didn't knock at my door. He didn't tell me, I need to come in, he didn't even say his name. I found him on the surveillance camera. I ran out and I thought he was trespassing, so I approached him. I go, what are you doing? He says, well, it doesn't matter. You're going to be out of business real soon anyway. He told me this. And I go, what are you doing? You didn't even ask my permission to come onto my property. You need to leave. And he says, it doesn't matter, we're going to get you anyway. So I watched him from the camera, from across the street, and he was scaling my property from across the street. I have a really beautiful office. How could I trust you that you're going to be right with me when you take my office and you're going to try to do what's right by me and what my property is valued at, when this man just did it from his car? That was wrong. I'm in good standing with my community. I'm involved with every different organization. It's not just me. I'm involved with my church. I outreach to everybody. My children are graduates. My daughter's going to have her PhD soon, probably within a matter of months. My job is to work to send my daughter to finish her PhD. My son is in engineering. I need to continue to work. That's what I've been doing. I'm happy. I love my job. So I'm happy and I love my family. And I want our young adults to progress in this country. Another thing is, why didn't you get the project done by Americans? Why wasn't it scaled by American made? I love our country. Why do we have to have a foreigner come out here and try to build something when he doesn't even understand that California has a lot of earthquakes every day? Now we're going to call this foreigner in from another country when this country California gets rocked in the wrong way to fix it? I don't think so. We're going to be out more than the money that we put into it. I think you need to think about it a little bit more not just how I'm affected, at every issue that I've mentioned at this point. And yes, we should get our Americans, and it should be just Americans, back to work. I believe that. This is America. My father's Purple Heart, Battle of the Bulge, and he showed me and he taught me. He was my mother and my father. He showed me strong is wrong for you to have approached me from the beginning and now tell me I'm going to be okay. That's all I need to tell you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Thank you. Chief Dunn, and he'll be followed by Supervisor Perret.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm here on behalf of the Association for California High-Speed Trains. I know, like you, I would express support for the previous speaker and her rights and property, and I think that none of us would support an interaction like she described. So I guess I'd like to first just offer that as a supporter of the project, and I know you as board members and staff are not supportive, would not support any interaction as was described, and we hope that that's an isolated incident and that would be corrected if that took place the way it was described. That's not okay. That's not how we want to do business. I know that's not how you want to do business. I'd like to start my comments just briefly to offer a kind word to your staff and specifically to your CEO, who I have the opportunity almost on a weekly basis lately to see talk about your business plan with the legislature. It's a plan which I've read. I must confess I didn't catch the grammatical or punctuation errors that may be more to do with my days as a college football player and lack of ability to recognize certain things than others. But I did read it. I will go back with my red pen and see if I can find them as well. But I'd like to commend CEO Morales. He has done an excellent job in talking about the plan, responding to comments from the legislature who are very aggressive, who do have concerns. This project has gotten more scrutiny, deservedly so, than anything, and I've been in this business for some time, and your staff represents you well. Your business plan, it does look and incorporate the governor's vision of rail modernization. California, as Mr. Smith and others have commented, has a growing population, no more so than in the Central Valley. This project will not only address the human need, but also the freight needs, go to modernize our system, provide air quality improvements, and bring the Central Valley jobs that it's lacked for decades. So with that, I just would like, there is good news out there. Your staff represents you well. It never was going to be easy. We all knew that, but we're committed to continue down that process. I'm pleased that your document is a living document as far as your business plan. You're taking comments, you're incorporating them into them, and then keeping the legislature apprised of their progress. So I would just commend you, keep on the path, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. You played football. I know Mr. Morales played baseball in high school. I don't know what position he played, but right now it's probably like catcher coming away from all these hearings with a lot of foul tips and bruises and so forth. But he has the confidence of the board, and I appreciate your comments. Supervisor Perea.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I played soccer, so I'd like to on behalf of Fresno Works, come again and represent and explain and discuss with you the efforts that we're engaged in Fresno County. First, last week we met with Commissioner Selby. It was great to talk to you and tell you about what we're doing in Fresno County, what the vision is, and welcome you to this board. Also like to actively support your efforts today in updating your 2014 business plan. I think it's right on point. I know you've taken comments, and that's great. That's what the whole deal is all about. But also want to talk about Monday. We had a very interesting symposium at Fresno State. President CAHSRA was very engaged and supportive of high-speed rail. Mr. Morales was at our summit on Monday and gave a presentation to engineering students about the future of high-speed rail and how it all fits. And I think that segues into where we all are today. Obviously, the number one goal is creating a transportation system up and down the state that will move people and the growing population. At the local level, we 100% support that, but we also, as we've talked about here before, we also support your upcoming decision to place a maintenance facility somewhere in this valley. So, we're here to share with you the efforts that we're engaged in and to tell you that we're very serious about it. We hope to be as competitive as we can be as you reach your decision point. But between our university, who has gone to other countries to study their curriculums, they are continuing to do so. We'll take further trips to strengthen that program. Our community college system is doing the same thing. And our EMS, our fire service, our police service are currently in the phase of talking about the plan and the expanded plan of how they would provide service to this facility. And that segues into my final comment, which is as big as high-speed rail is for California, and as much as we want that main facility, our vision is bigger, and I think a lot of folks' vision is bigger in terms of the fact that one day high-speed rail will be shooting across this country. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that that's going to happen. It's just a matter of from what point is it going to come, from the Northeast here or here to the Northeast. I think that's part of the battle, but it's going to be from California to the rest of the country. And our vision is to position Fresno County as a high-speed rail capital of the world. And we talked about this at a rail summit last month, or rather last week, and there were FRA officials there, and they invited us to come back to Washington to talk about our expanded vision. We're talking about a training and education and testing facility designation for Fresno County, and they want to hear our story. So we're preparing our team. We have a lot of work that we've done, and we're going back to Washington in the next couple of months to lay out and make our case to them. So continue your good work. I appreciate what you're doing, and I think one day we're all going to be riding a pretty neat train in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Appreciate it. Our last speaker, definitely last but not least, is Mayor Pro Tem of Anaheim, Chris Murray, who I understand had to battle the airlines this morning to get here. You know, there is a better way of
a little bit of
intercity
fog
travel.
getting out. So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to taking the train next time. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today on behalf of Anaheim and Orange County in strong support of this important project, and to speak in support of the draft 2014 business plan for California high-speed rail. This plan reflects the Phase 1 high-speed rail system connecting San Francisco and Merced with Los Angeles and Anaheim through the phased and blended implementation of a one-seat ride that was originally adopted in the 2012 business plan. And Anaheim entered into the MOU with the High-Speed Rail Authority and other participating Southern California transportation agencies to identify and move forward with a program of early investments in the regional and local rail systems to facilitate this blended approach described in the 2012 business plan. This approach will provide, calls for the High-Speed Rail Authority to provide $1 billion in Proposition 1A funds by 2020 for potential early investments in important projects across the state. The Southern California region, specifically projects in the Anaheim, Los Angeles, and Palmdale segment, were allocated $500 million of that funding to be used by agencies through the MOU with the High-Speed Rail Authority. And these projects eligible for Prop 1A funding, they include three in the Anaheim and Orange County area, and one being at State College Boulevard, of important grade separation that's considered a priority for the Low San Corridor, the Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego corridor, which is the second busiest commuter rail corridor in the country today. I'm here today standing in strong support, representing not just Anaheim, but a greater Orange County contingency of agencies, but also community members. And if there's any doubt, please don't let it remain that Orange County supports this project. We're so tired of hearing that the support stops at the Los Angeles line. You have support from Orange County going south, but I'm here today specifically with an awful lot of letters from, well, I have to say it, the 2013-2014 Pacific Division champions as of last night, the Anaheim Ducks, our Anaheim Angels, Disneyland Resort, the Orange County Business Council, the Anaheim Orange County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we just approved expansion plans for that important facility, the Anaheim Chamber and the Anaheim Grove, our concert venue, and the City of Anaheim. You have tremendous support in Orange County and Anaheim. Thank you for this very thoughtful approach. Thank you for keeping Los Angeles, Anaheim in that one-ticket ride. That designation is very important to us. And later this year, I hope you can all join us for a ribbon cutting on the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center, which will be your southern terminus. It is going to be an incredible it'll be our Grand Central Station, but it'll be an intermodal facility serving for the next 100 years riders and travelers in the Southern California region, the centerpiece of the Low San Corridor. We're very proud of it, and if anyone's in town locally, would love to give you a hard hat tour before then, but certainly want to extend the invitation for you to join us in November of this year for that important ribbon cutting. We are investing locally to be ready for you. This project is critical to the state of California. It's critical to our own region, and thank you so much for the incredible work of your staff, of your board, of the legislature to come together collaboratively with the local agencies to make sure this project is a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate that and your trip up here. And one of the prior speakers, Mr. Allen, was talking about the importance of minimizing grade separations, and I'm happy that the work that we are doing in Orange County is in Anaheim and looking at important grade separations there, and I think that's been a great collaboration with the city. And we know we have a lot of support in Orange County. It's just there's a little unevenness in the political leadership throughout the county, perhaps, but
it's getting better.
A little bit.
And
anyway.
grade separations are critical not just to safety but to the environment and relieving congestion. So you have strong support from us for these important grade separations. They're costly. We couldn't get them all done without the authorities' support and early investments in the Prop 1A funding. So thank you.
Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. It'd be great if all of us could get the invitation to the event.
I'm sorry?
It'd be great if all of us could get the invitation, particularly because I'm in L.A. I'd be happy to go down.
It sort of depends on what you do up here, whether I make sure you get an invitation. No, that would be great.
To see you again.
Yeah, and we Oakland A's fans especially would like to go down there. So, okay, with that, we close the public comment period. I should have done that first. I went to the approval of the board minutes. I don't know why. I think I was just a little sleep deprived this morning, so I'm just sorry about that, going a little bit out of order. But thank everybody for coming. Many of our speakers come from long distances, and we do value your comments. The next item that is on the agenda, since the board minutes have been approved now, is the initiation of the strategic and succession planning process. And I understand, Mr. Morales, that is going to be withdrawn from today's agenda and come back in the future. And let me just also apologize to Dennis Trujillo, who has been working very hard on this and has been trying to talk to me about this all week, and I've been tied up in other things. But Mr. Morales, you want to talk about what the path forward is on this?
Right. Mr. Chairman, what we're doing is going back and looking at the existing strategic planning process and documents and making sure that we're taking full advantage of what's in place already before we start forward with any sort of new planning. It's not just the strategic plan, but it's very importantly succession planning also. And so what we will do is come back at a future meeting and update the board on where we are in that process and what our next steps will be going forward on that.
I just want to warn the staff that when I get the draft strategic planning process, I'm going to hand it to my wife, who was the vice president for strategic planning at a Fortune 100 company. I'm going to ask her to take a look at it. So you guys need to be on your toes. Yeah. I don't hand out my wife's phone number that often, Dennis. I just would like you to know that.
Certainly not to you.
Yeah, not to you. All right, we'll move on to item 3, the approval of the amendment to the STV Incorporated Regional Consultant Contract. Mr. Morales, you want to introduce this, or Mr. Jarvis is going to present it? How do you want to proceed?
Scott Jarvis will present. I think that, again, the approach here is consistent with what we've laid out for the board previously, which is when contracts are up for renewal, our default position is to recompete. And then we go through a process then of looking at the pros and cons and whether there are mitigating circumstances that would be in the best interest of the state to do something else. And so I just want to make sure you understand that as the backdrop for this.
And we've had those conversations at the board level before about that balance.
So these are both time extensions with no additional funding in order to allow for a transition period. But Mr. Jarvis can run through the particulars.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Board members. My name is Scott Jarvis. I'm the Assistant Chief Program Manager. And as Mr. Morales mentioned, the purpose of this presentation is to seek board authorization to negotiate and execute a contract amendment with STV Incorporated to extend the contract for time up to a 9-month extension through March 31st, 2015, and to require STV to comply with the authority's 30% small business participation goal for the Los Angeles to Anaheim project section, and to develop a draft request for qualifications for reprocurement of this contract. So STV Incorporated, they're the regional consultant for this stretch from Los Angeles to Anaheim, and the contract with STV was awarded on December 29th, 2006. And the original contract value was $21.4 million and the scope was preliminary engineering and project-specific environmental work. And the contract has subsequently been amended due to modifications and refinement of the project scope of the work so that the existing contract value is $50 million. And as of March 2014, approximately $36 million has been expended on this project section. And the STV contract is scheduled to expire on June 30th, 2014. In the contract, the work is based on an annual work plan, and the regional consultant, RC, only performs duties that the authority has agreed to by approval of its annual work program. And staff has determined that the work under the AWP can be completed in the most efficient and cost-effective manner by STV. So staff recommends amending the contract with STV on this section by extending the duration for 9 months through March 30th, 2015 to complete critical tasks. And this amendment does not include any increase in the contract dollar amount and is consistent with the budget projections contained in the draft 2014 business plan. And again, the proposed amendment would extend the contract duration for 9 months through March 30th, 2015. So the scope of the work is completion of supplemental alternative analysis, stakeholder engagement activities, coordination with public agencies, station area planning, and 15% preliminary engineering as required to complete supplemental alternative analysis. So extending the contract duration will enable the authority to retain the team's expertise and experience, maintain continuity and momentum for completing this work, and allow an effective transition after the contract is reprocured. So the amendment would further require STV to comply with the authority's small business and disadvantaged enterprise program and the applicable 30% participation goal for small businesses. So to summarize, staff recommends to the board approve a contract amendment with STV to extend the contract duration for 9 months through March 30th, 2015, and require STV to comply with the authority's 30% small business participation goal for the Los Angeles to Anaheim section. And then, in addition, to direct staff to proceed with preparation of a new solicitation for the RC contract for the Los Angeles to Anaheim project section.
Okay. Questions from members of the board? Ms. Perez-Estolano?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I have a quick question, Scott.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand what we are doing actually. What staff is doing is while STV is continuing the ongoing work, our staff are going to be basically drafting an RFQ for that phase of work, but the next piece of work. Is that right? Because there's that second line, and you read past it. Staff will develop a draft RFQ for the new procurement of this project, which is the second piece of the staff recommendation. But essentially, STV is going to continue the work, but you are going to work on a new RFQ.
Correct. We're going to concurrently, while STV is going to continue the work for the next 9 months, we will work on the reprocurement of a follow-up contract during that time period. So, yes, so those will be concurrent activities. So then we'll go through the procurement process to select a new regional consultant during this 9-month period.
Okay. And then in terms of the new RFQ, are there additional elements within that? And are there new considerations that we're putting in the RFQ, the new one?
The scope of the work would essentially be the same. You know, the working towards environmental clearance and preliminary engineering to support that environmental clearance. I mean, there will be the authority's 30% small business goal will be part of that RFQ, which wasn't part of the original RFQ. Several years ago when this was procured.
And will STV be allowed to submit a response to that RFQ as well?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to be clear. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Morales?
It was, Scott noted it several times, but I just want to make sure, again, it's clear. These contracts, when they were originally awarded, did not include, they were awarded prior to the small business goal and did not include that. So even though this is just an extension of time, as we've committed to with the board, with every new contract, even if it's just an extension, we're inserting that 30% requirement now in all of the contracts so that it doesn't apply retroactively, but it now says as of this contract extension, if approved, that 30% does apply. So it really is, again, part of our ongoing commitment to make sure that we achieve those goals.
Very good. Other questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Moved by Director Frank.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Hartnett. Secretary, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Hartnett.
Yes.
Ms. Selby? Yes. Mr. Rossi? Ms. Shank?
Yes.
Ms. Perez Estelano?
Yes.
Mr. Henning?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Jarvis, looks like you're up on item 4 as well.
Yes, similarly, the purpose...
Hold on one second. Ms. Perez Estelano.
I apologize, Scott. I actually need to step out on this matter because it pertains to a contractor that before I was appointed, I was doing some work with, and now I need to step out.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's okay. You can start.
All right. Okay. Okay. This is a similar presentation where the purpose is to seek board authorization to negotiate and execute a contract amendment with AECOM to extend the contract for time up to a 1-year extension through June 30th, 2015, and to require AECOM to comply with the authority's 30% small business participation goal. So AECOM is the regional consultant for the Altamont Corridor Project section, and the contract with AECOM was awarded on November 12th, 2008. And the original contract value was $55 million for preliminary engineering and project-specific environmental work. And as of March 2014, approximately $8.2 million has been expended on this Altamont corridor, and the AECOM contract for the Altamont corridor section expires on June 30th, 2014. So the contract, again, this contract is based on an annual work plan, and the RC only performs duties that the authority has agreed to through the approval of the annual work program. In June 2013, the authority adopted a new updated agreement with the San Joaquin Railroad Regional Rail Commission, referred to as SJRRC. So as a result of this revised agreement with SJRRC, the commission staff agreed to manage future work in the Altamont corridor on behalf of the authority. And SJRRC has requested consideration for this time-only extension and is in the process of transferring $1 million of funds to advance the work on this segment. So staff recommends amending the contract duration with AECOM on the Altamont corridor by extending duration for 1 year through June 30th, 2015, in order to facilitate permanent transfer of the consultant agreement to SJRRC and coordinate the appropriate funding mechanisms to accommodate distribution of future Proposition 1A funds. So the amendment does not include any increase in contract capacity or dollar amount and is consistent with the draft 2014 business plan. And so the proposed amendment would extend the contract duration through 2030-15, and it would cover the following general services: continued planning and engineering work, negotiation of an agreement to fully and permanently transfer oversight and management of the Altamont corridor to the SJRRC, and identification of the appropriate process that would permanently facilitate future transfer of legislatively allocated state funding to the SJRRC. So extending the contract duration will enable the authority to retain the team's expertise and experience, maintain continuity and momentum, and allow an effective transition after reprocurement. So in addition, similarly, this amendment will further require AECOM to comply with the authority's small and disadvantaged business enterprise program and the applicable 30% goal. So in summary, staff recommends that the board approve a contract amendment with AECOM to extend the contract duration for 1 year through June 30th, 2015, and require AECOM to comply with the authority's 30% small business participation goal for the Altamont corridor section.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Morales, I'm sorry, why don't we go to Ms. Selby first? You have a question?
Yeah. I just had a quick question just about $8.2 million is what has been spent heretofore. How is it going to be possible to spend the rest of it? I mean, is there some that's only an additional year? So is it just the nature of the project that it speeds up rapidly? It's been 5 years and $8.2 million have been spent?
We don't expect that the entire contract value will be reached over the next year. So we do expect that there will be an acceleration in the work being done, but it's unlikely that full $55 million contract value will be reached.
Okay, and then the second question is, when did you add the small business 30%? When did that happen? What year? Just for my own clarification.
As far as a policy by the board itself, I need help on that.
So 2012.
It was I believe it was August of 2012 when the board adopted the goal, and so every contract since then has included it, and so what this allows us to do is go back and insert it into prior contracts.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Morales?
Just one other point of clarification, particularly for our newer members, to put these time extensions in some context. Normally, we would want to start the re-procurement process in time to do it without having to provide a time extension. The reason we're doing this here is originally all of these contracts, all of the regional contracts as well as the program management contract and some others were all enacted at the same time and all ended at the same time. We've worked over the last year to start renewing or acting on those contracts and get them on a staggered schedule. And so going forward, we would not anticipate, and in fact would work to avoid having to provide time-only extensions, and instead would actually suggest a new procurement or whatever the appropriate action would be upon termination of the contract. But we have to come back in this case. We're not quite there yet, and these contracts otherwise would expire at the end of June of this year. So that's why we're doing these time-onlys. But again, going forward, we would do everything we can to avoid that sort of extension.
And just picking up on Ms. Selby's question, I would just want to get comfortable that knowing that the policy is defaulting towards re-procurement when these come due, that we not get into kind of last-minute spend-a-thon situations with the existing contractors. So these are task-driven contracts, is that right?
Yes, that is. That's correct. And all of the contracts are up to amounts, so they were based on an estimate of the time of what sort of work would be done, but the contractor cannot do anything without specific directive from the authority. And in this case, with the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, as to what activities they can undertake within the terms of their contract. And it's part of an annual work plan that's developed that ties to the scope of the overall contract.
Right. Okay. That the authority's contract manager reviews and authorizes any work. So.
All right. I'll entertain a motion on this. It was moved by Director Shank.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Hartnett. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Hartnett.
Yes.
Ms. Selby. Yes. Mr. Rossi. Ms. Shank.
Yes.
Ms. Perez-Estelano. Mr. Henning.
Yes.
Mr. Frank.
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, the next item then is the consideration of the draft 2014 business plan update. I'll give Ms. Perez-Estelano, she's back in the room. Okay. Mr. Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we are now to the agenda item regarding the 2014 business plan. Just as a reminder of what this plan is, what's required of it, and what is included in it, there are specific statutory requirements for the business plan, including calling it a business plan. And those statutes lay out the very specific elements of it. As we have noted before, the 2012 plan really set the new direction for the authority in terms of its implementation of the program, and this plan builds on it, but it includes important updates of the plan as required under law and as required as a good business practice, those being things such as updating the demand forecasting, the operations and maintenance costs, and laying out the next steps. We have proceeded after release of the plan on February 7th with the 60-day public comment period, and we'll talk more about the comments that we received up to and including today. There have been various ways for people to submit comments, whether they be individuals or organizations, and we've received them through each of these different means. Through the website, the majority of them came in submitted as comments to the website, but we also received voicemails, letters, and comments at the board's hearing on the issue and on the subsequent board meetings. Outreach has been extensive to beyond those mechanisms, making sure the public was aware of the plan and its contents and their opportunity to participate in the process. I would also note we had the legislature conducted 3 hearings at which they heard the business plan and commented on it. We had a number of briefings with our regional transportation partners to take their comments and engage with them on it. Prior to today's meeting, we had received a total of 165 comments, and you see the breakouts of the categories of how they came in. All of those comments have been provided to the board and to the public for their consideration, posted on the website, and we will continue to do that. And upon conclusion, finalization of the plan, all comments received will be on the website and remain available for people to be able to see them going forward. This is a general breakdown of the comments by several different categories in terms of when comments came in, what sections they pertain to, and a general sense of the extent to which comments were rather generic or were very specific in their sense. So just to give a sense of the amount of analysis done of the various comments and the categorization of them. We've broken the comments for board consideration into 2 categories generally, and you have those before you. The first are the really technical changes, the errata sheet. Mr. Dayton was quite right. There were some mistakes made, some editorial issues that needed to be cleared up. Also a number of administrative things that we just need to update as we go from draft to final. Everything ranging from literally removing the word draft from the document wherever it appears, to updating based on the passage of time. Things, for instance, in the draft, we noted that the Caltrain environmental document would be coming out. It has now been released, so we want to make sure we reflect that appropriately in the final plan, and then also ensure that the links that will be provided in the final plan are updated. So that errata sheet is in front of you. Nothing really of any controversy. Again, they're technical corrections and fixes, but certainly happy to take any questions or comments on those items. The second category of comments are the ones that are more substantive in their nature, in that they are responding to specific comments and are additions to the plan, changes in wording or emphasis. And we have a number of those that came out of different discussions. One of them, for instance, being some clarification about what a usable segment is versus an initial operating segment, and why that's important, how it differs, how the two differ from each other. The legislative hearings, in particular, on our budget proposal, on the business plan, and on the governor's proposal for cap and trade funding. We've reflected that more in the language before you, and in particular, SB 535, which was statute sponsored by Senator De Leon, that requires that a portion of greenhouse gas funds be expended in disadvantaged communities and for the benefit of disadvantaged communities. Our program very much ties into that. When you look at where we are investing, there's a strong correlation with disadvantaged communities and strong benefits that can come there, so we describe that in the plan. And then the peer review group and others have commented on the need to provide some more clarification on the business model that we're using going forward. So those changes are all before you with the language that is proposed for inclusion in the revised plan. So what we're seeking today would be the board's approval of the changes in the errata sheet as well as in the staff recommended. And then we are any comments that you heard in today's session that you want to direct us to address in the revised plan, to give us that direction to do so that we can revise the plan and submit it as required by the May 1 schedule. with that, I'm happy to take questions or direction.
All right. So time for my colleagues to weigh in with their thoughts. Ms. Perez-Estelano.
Jeff, it's a great business plan draft document, and I do appreciate the fact that we've talked about it. This is now our third board meeting where we've actually talked about it, and the public has had an opportunity to speak to the plan, the draft document, several times. And I know at the last meeting I asked, what was the process through which we were going to try and promote and kind of advertise the opportunity to pipe in and to give a comment to the document. So I know that a lot of outreach was done, and whether it was on our social media platforms or whatever. And so I know, and I've heard people in Los Angeles, Southern California, saying, we know your plan's out and we plan to give comments. So I know that effort was made, and so I know the team on the staff side has really worked hard to do that. So thank you for that. I also appreciate very much the additional text that has complemented the new document, I guess the final document, because I think it was important, and I think honestly it possibly provides even more clarity and detail that we needed. So specifically, I think it was important to identify the MOU that we have with our transit agency partners, where we specifically kind of call out the investment that we're making throughout the networks up and down the state. I think that was important. I can't tell you how relieved I am to see specific language on SB 535. I know that there has been some questions raised as to high-speed rail and cap and trade, and certainly 535 is a kind of statement as to how those funds will be used. And I appreciate the significant addition in terms of the text for 535. The one thing that I would ask is that in the $4.5 million where we're distributing for additional funding for planning at the local jurisdictions, where it says providing new connections to economic centers, and we've identified funds that are going to be going to those communities. And I know, talking to our team, that we're trying to get those funds out. And so I think what I'd like to see is, and I don't know how to do this, but that there is a intention from the high-speed rail to work in partnership, both in terms of the planning side as well as the investment side. And so, it's been challenging to get those funds out, and for whatever reason. So I don't know if we can just make clear, because we are making an investment in the stations, and we're working in partnership with the local jurisdictions. And going forward, I think this board and this team wants to see that happen. So, we haven't distributed 4.5, although we've identified. So I don't know how we can make the language more. I don't know. I don't want to wordsmith you guys, but I just think we are trying. We are working hard to do this, and so I would like to see that. I also appreciate very much the additional language on page 27 regarding our fiber optic opportunities in terms of providing access to communities that presently do not have access to Internet broadband. And so those are issues that we, as a board, will look at as a policy level. But to me, I think it is a phenomenal opportunity that high-speed rail presents. And it's not just to me, it's more than mobility. It's so much more than that. So this language that we're adding as new text, I think, has been, to me, an important message. Do you want?
I think that's an area, and we appreciate the input that you've provided on this, and the push to look at this more closely, because I think this is an area where the authority and others, frankly, haven't really appreciated the fact as fully as we should that part of what we're creating here, it's not just the train, but it's an asset to the state. Mm-hmm. a 520-mile dedicated right-of-way has the potential to achieve many other purposes, fiber being certainly one of them, and that was identified by Assemblymember Bloom in particular in the hearing we had with him as something that he sees as very important, and again, really demonstrates the broader benefits of this investment to the state. And again, the fact that our right-of-way will be going through all of the population centers, but also goes through some of the most underserved areas in the state in terms of access to Wi-Fi and to Internet. So we're working with the PUC, working with the technology agency and others to look at how to capitalize on that opportunity, and so it is an area of emphasis going forward.
And I'd just like to offer to my colleagues, having an opportunity to sit down with one of the PUC commissioners and her telling me basically, it's not just the Central Valley that needs access to Internet and broadband, it's, Los Angeles County where the telecommunication providers simply don't have towers, and so there's parts of LA County that are underserved, and so it's more than just the Central Valley, it's urban metro LA. And when we're talking about LA Unified School District students with their iPads and they go home to Sylmar and they don't have internet, so they can't do their assignments because they don't have access. And so when you begin to kind of unfold all this, it becomes quite an economic development, education, accessibility point to me that I think that we have just begun to understand, not only as an operations, but in terms of a kind of policy directive that we have from the board. So I just want to say that the new plan, as we inform ourselves about more things, it's much, much better, and I'm excited to be able to present this to the legislature. And as we begin to kind of fold out these new pieces, begin to take in those new ideas about innovative and kind of creative partnering that we can make with our project, with the project.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. Other thoughts, inputs, comments from members of the board? I have some, but I'm going to reserve them. Mr. Hartnett.
Yes,
Vice Chair Hartnett.
I agree with the comments of our board colleague with respect to the clarification of the language on the intent. I think that's a good change. Just really a couple of questions for Mr. Morales and our General Counsel. The comments today we received from the public are not materially different from my reading of comments we've received at prior board meetings and in the written communications to date. And and those comments that we've previously received have helped inform the board in terms of our view of the adequacy of the business plan as well as staff's recommendations as to changes. So the first question, Mr. Morales, to you is there anything that was received in public comment today that from your perspective is materially different from what has been previously suggested to staff or the board that would cause you to make any recommendations on changes to the draft business plan?
Using the distinction of materially different, I would say I don't believe so. We will certainly go back and look at the transcript, though, also to make sure that we captured whatever was made. But I think much of what we heard was consistent with comments that we've received already and have already factored into the revisions that we've presented to the board.
Okay. That's my assessment as well, but I just wanted to see if you might have a different perspective. And Mr. Falens, with respect to any of the issues brought up by any of the public commentators as to the legal adequacy of the business plan, again, it seems to me that those comments were previously delivered to the board either in public hearings or in written comments or otherwise. But same question as to Mr. Morales. Was there anything presented today in the public comment that would cause you to make any recommendations to the board in any different manner that have previously been made as to the legal adequacy or sufficiency of the draft business plan?
No, I've heard nothing today that would change the opinion of myself and Mr. Morales that what we've done so far in presenting this plan to you is legally sufficient. And that would include the process that we've gone through, which is the 60-day public comment period. And we've had what's required under the statute. In fact, gone beyond that because it requires one public hearing. We've had at least two, and then today this would be the third. So we have met the legal requirements.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I just, following on Mr. Hartnett's point, I think in some of the comments that there appears to be some confusion potentially over what's exactly required to be in the business plan. And as you know, we have a lot of different statutory requirements for different reports and different things we have to do. One of the reasons we included at the front of the business plan the actual statutory language was to try to make it clear to the board and the public of what is actually required to be in this plan. We have separate requirements for other things that show up in different documentation and different reports we submit to the legislature. And so I think some of the issues that have been raised, I think, deal with some of the confusion over what's actually required to be in this plan.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I think to be clear, there's no confusion on the part of the authority or the board as to what needs to be included. I think you've rightfully pointed out that, correctly pointed out that there are opinions by others that are based upon a lack of understanding from my perspective as to what is legally required or not. And so it's always difficult certainly I don't discount any of the public comment whatsoever because it's always been very helpful, but it's not comment that I rely on for legal advice to the High-Speed Rail Authority Board.
Fair enough. Speaking of legal advice, we have two lawyers about to weigh in. So, Ms. Shank, why don't you?
Well, the legal advice I give right now is about what you pay for it. Now, look, having had the perspective of years of business plans, I just think this is a very, very good piece of work. I've read every comment, and just saying what Jim said, there was very little that was new. There were some reminders of what we should do, look at, consider, and I believe that you and your staff have done an outstanding job of incorporating those thoughtful comments. It has always been a challenge as to what other uses this document to what other uses we could put it. And I think we now have one that can be the basis for educating discussion, for debate throughout the state, not only the importance of high-speed rail as to integrate it into our master plan for transportation. It doesn't supplant rail or existing rail. It doesn't supplant air. It doesn't supplant the interstate. It is in addition to, and a cost-effective addition. But also, as Catherine pointed out, the other kinds of expansions for the future. We've always talked about what high-speed rail has done in other nations for economic development, and I think this business plan can be used now as a tool to, say, educate the importance of high-speed rail and these many other factors. I was pleased to see that the peer review was so positive, considering where we were with the first, most of you, I guess, weren't here with the first peer review of our first business plan, which was deservedly negative, and I think now it was deservedly positive. So thank you for this tremendous effort. I, as a board member, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Shank. Mr. Frank.
I just wanted to make a comment and then ask a question. I do want to commend the staff on what I think is a very proactive public outreach and comment practice. This doesn't strike me as a pro forma jumping through the hoops, meeting minimal requirements. I think the staff made very positive and proactive efforts to engage the public and attract as much comment and suggestions as possible. I realize that not everyone who has provided comments is in agreement, but it strikes me from reading the comments and hearing the testimony that in some cases, certainly not all, that is more reflective of concerns and opposition to the underlying project than to the four corners of the business plan. So I think that's an important distinction, and based on my review and what we're hearing from our staff and our general counsel, I'm satisfied that we meet the legal requirements. In terms of the action that's being requested today, my understanding is that the board is being asked to essentially approve the business plan in principle while delegating to our CEO and the staff the obligation to finalize it, make any non-substantive changes that are necessary to meet the legal requirements, and submit it within the time frame prescribed by the legislation. Is that correct?
I would only modify that slightly. To make non-substantive changes or to make substantive changes as directed by today's discussion of the board.
Thank you.
Okay. And I meant to ask at the beginning of my colleagues, are people comfortable with that approach? Because it is our requirement to adopt the business plan, but by the same token, we wanted to afford time to integrate any comments that were coming in up till the comment period, which really ended today. So I didn't get a sense that people were uncomfortable with that. Ms. Perez-Estelano?
No, and I think what I would like to make clear to folks is that if you want to see the public comments, they are available on the website. As I think, I don't know when's the last date that they were posted, but 500 pages, I guess, plus are available if you'd like to peruse the comments. And I did read all of them. I appreciate all the comments that we received from cities, from railroad authorities and things like that. So they are available for anybody who would like to see the comments that were posted.
Thank you, and thank you for making that point. It's a very important one. I had some remarks I was going to make, but I just wanted to check and see if my colleagues had contributed what they wanted to. First of all, I want to join my colleagues in commending the staff. I also want to thank the public for its participation, even people who take time to say, please stop this project, I hate it, are taking time out of their day to participate in a governmental process. And so we do thank the public for their comments. Some of them come formally from businesses or governments. Some of them come from citizens who have a point of view. Some of them come from citizens who are affected by the project directly. Some come from citizens who just as general members of the California populace have feelings they want to express. And I'm proud of the fact that I serve on a board where we are respectful enough of that the members sit down and we read all these comments, and we want them, and we put them on our website. Some of them are harshly critical. We put them on our website because we want the public to also see what the public is saying. So that last point that was made by Ms. Perez-Estelano was quite appropriate in that regard. I would just like to offer these three thoughts. First, as our CEO, Mr. Morales, said, this document is a product of a legislative statutory requirement that's been imposed on this board. And it's for the benefit of the legislature and the broader public. But with respect to the legislature, 2 years ago there was a significant vote to proceed with appropriations for high-speed rail. But there's been a significant turnover in the legislature since that time. And in the era of term limits, there will continue to be turnover in the legislature. And so I think having a foundational document for members of the legislature and legislative staff where we articulate where we believe this program is and where it's going is very important. And that is a key purpose of this document. And I think it fulfills that purpose, not just in terms of, as Mr. Frank said, the minimal legal requirements, but really the spirit of trying to inform the legislature of where we're trying to go. So that, I feel very good about that. There are two areas that I guess I would ask Mr. Morales to just take a look at as you move into finalization of the document. First, the question came up again today. It has come up very often. Where is all the funding coming from? I know I've been quoted, and not trying to be glib, in the past when I'm asked that question personally of saying, I have no idea. I had no idea when I was on the BART board and we were starting those projects. BART to San Jose was just a dream. It had no dollars associated with it. It's in construction today. I always tell the funding story that early in my time on the High Speed Rail Authority, when I was still commuting back and forth from D.C., I took a red eye one night, which I'm too old for, I have to say, and got to the airport, got in the taxi cab, grabbed a Washington Post, and as we were driving from Dulles Airport into downtown Washington, D.C., past the ongoing construction of the Silver Line that was being built from downtown out towards Dulles, as we were going past the structure that was being built there, I was looking at a front page story that said, "Debate rages on about funding for Silver Line." They were building the first phase of the Silver Line while they were still debating and trying to figure out how they were going to fund the second phase. And, we are not alone in this. We've never been alone in this. This project has been subject to more questions that no other project has been asked on that. This is a generationally built project that is multidimensional. Having said that, the thing about funding is that in many cases it's opportunistic. When the authors of Prop 1A put that measure on the ballot in 2008, they had no way of knowing not only that Barack Obama was going to be elected president, but that one of his first acts was to ask the Congress for a stimulus bill that included $8 billion for high-speed rail. No one could have anticipated that last piece. And yet this organization, and I have to give credit here to Ms. Schenck and virtually all of our other predecessors who were on the board at that time, basically was prepared enough to take advantage of that opportunity when it came up. California now has $3.3 billion of that $8 billion. We have the lion's share, far more than our proportionate population would dictate, of that funding. Similarly, no one knew that Governor Jerry Brown would come in, take ownership of this project, leadership in it, and propose to the California legislature that a significant portion of the cap-and-trade revenues be devoted to high-speed rail. And that is an opportunity that I think this organization has been ready to participate in because we do have a very good story, as confirmed by Secretary Mary Nichols, as confirmed by Professor Horowitz in her testimony, that not only are we legally qualified to participate in that program, but that from the standpoint of the broader good of the changes in society that will come about from high-speed rail, that we are an appropriate recipient of that. The legislature will consider that. I want to commend Mr. Morales, who has been working very hard on this issue with our legislative committees and our legislative leaders, explaining what we're doing. And by all accounts, what I'm hearing back is that the more he testifies on this, the more he works with the legislature, that legislators are saying publicly that they are becoming more and more comfortable with this notion of high-speed rail being worthy of this allocation. So Jeff has done a superb job on this and deserves credit. So it's not to say that we shouldn't answer this question to the best of our ability for the public. We have told people that the excess revenues of this project can generate probably at least a third of the funding coming from private sector sources. So if you look at that, you look at the money that we have right now, you look at the bond money, you look at the potential for cap and trade, we actually are A, further down the road than a lot of projects of this size, and B, I'm going to make the provocative statement that if the legislature does provide us the cap and trade allocation, we have a more stable ongoing revenue stream than just about any transportation project out there. And I hear people say all the time, well, the highway system has the Federal Highway Trust Fund, which last time I checked is completely and totally oversubscribed. So I don't know how you make the argument that any new highway project has a dedicated funding stream when they're tapping into something that is already overdrawn. So I want to put this in perspective, and I guess I would just say, Mr. Morales, that to the extent that given this commentary comes up all the time, as you and staff look at this document, if we can provide any further clarification or context, perhaps, on funding, that would be good. And finally, the last thing I would ask the staff to take a look at, it was disheartening for me to read the number of comments of people who said, you're not building what we voted for in Prop 1A. And it's disheartening for a number of reasons. As a public official, sworn, as Ms. Selby did this morning, to uphold our state constitution and its state laws, I take that pretty personally, number one. And number two, it's just sad for me because I think we have just not done an adequate job. I'll point the finger back at us. We have not done an adequate job of explaining what it is we're doing. And I just had this commentary yesterday because I have an unfortunate penchant to participate in some of the blog comments that are out there, which always makes our public affairs staff a little nervous. But as I said in a posting I made yesterday, you know, there's just a lot of confusion between what the system will look like as it's being built compared to what the system will look at once it is built. And we are building the system in phases, both laterally and vertically. Vertically means we start to improve existing rail service, make early investments, and build up to full high-speed rail. The end state of what we are building is exactly and precisely what the voters voted for in Proposition 1A. A 200-mile-an-hour capable train system serving the major population centers of this state, clean because it's electrified, and able to convey people from Los Angeles to San Francisco, designed to achieve that in 2 hours and 40 minutes. I have to say we had an unfortunate incident again last week with a newspaper report that misrepresented and misconstrued and misstated testimony in front of the state legislature about our design criteria, and took a statement made by a member of the peer review group who was talking about an illustrative 3-hour and 8-minute trip with stops to make the point that he'd been convinced by our staff that they had adequately looked at the ridership numbers and stress tested them, and that even in that length of time, we made the ridership numbers, and conflated that with somehow not meeting the design criteria of the law. And there's no other way to state it except that it was wrong. So I would hope that one of the things we could do, maybe it's a pop-out section, maybe something, that tries to do a better job than I've done or we've done collectively of explaining to the public that this is being built in steps, but that the steps are leading somewhere. And where the steps lead to is what the public voted for in Proposition 1A. And I don't know anybody on this board who's not committed to that, and I am not aware of any action that this board has ever taken that in any way undermines our ability to achieve that goal. So having read these comments that keep saying you're not building what we voted for, I think we have an obligation to restate to the public and the legislature that we are. I didn't quite mean to go on my soapbox that long, but that one really got to me. So, Mr. Morales, if the staff could take a look at that and maybe do a better job of articulating that point than I've been able to do in my years on the board, that would be appreciated. So, with that, I would entertain a motion from the board to direct the staff to complete the production of the 2014 draft business plan consistent with the expressions of the board today, and to incorporate public comment, and to then convey that to the legislature on behalf of the board.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Henning, seconded by Mr. Frank. Ms. Perez-Estelano, I'm sorry, did you wish to make a comment?
Nope.
Okay. Could the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Hartnett?
Yes.
Ms. Selby?
Abstain.
Mr. Rossi? Ms. Schenk?
Yes.
Ms. Perez-Estelano?
Yes.
Mr. Henning?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. I want to thank Mr. Morales, and I know that there are many people on the staff that you'd like to recognize.
I was just going to make that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get to stand up and present this, but there are a lot of people who make this happen and are responsible for everything from the outreach to just making sure that the comments are received, reviewed, and made available to the full public. And that whole process takes a lot of effort, and we have a lot of very good people doing it, and I just want to commend all of them for that work.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. Thank the staff. I'm going to turn to people for new business, but I'd like to recognize a distinguished gentleman who I see just came into the room, and that's my friend Francisco Fernandez Lafuente, who comes to us from Spain, who has been a builder of high-speed rail in Spain and around the world, and who I understand is about to become a Californian. So welcome to California, Francisco. It's really great to see you. New business, I know that Ms. Shank had indicated that there was an item that she wanted to raise. I'd like to recognize her at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, under an item of new business, I would like to ask you and my colleagues to ask the staff to look into a new matter. As we know, President Obama on Women's Equality Day has tried to tease out from federal subcontractors the pay inequity between men and women who are doing the same job. And he's done this through a series of executive orders and directions to the Labor Department to gather information. Since this is the single largest project that we will have in California in the near future, I would like to see if we at High Speed Rail can show some leadership in doing something similar with our contractors and subcontractors, and that is to determine if there is pay inequity, which of course I believe that there is, and whether it's 70 cents on the dollar or 87 cents or 66 cents, I mean the debate about the number, that is not based on anything but gender or sex. I think we have an opportunity to show some leadership in this direction, picking up the leadership of the President in this arena. So if, with your concurrence and that of the Board, if we could ask the staff to begin to look into this. I've already discussed it with Council, who thinks that we could take a look at this and see if there is something that's not onerous, but at least informational, that can be brought to us on the subject.
Well, personally, I think that's great. I mean, we talk about really making sure that the benefits of this program reach all Californians, and we should make sure that it reaches all Californians equally. So I applaud Ms. Shank for raising this issue. I don't know what the particulars are in terms of how we do it, but she's asking the staff to look at that and come back to us. I don't know if any other colleagues would like to weigh in on this, or Mr. Morales, but I think it's very appropriate, and I appreciate her raising it.
Thank you.
I would just say absolutely agree. We'll look into it. I know this doesn't get at the pay issue directly, but I think as part of our broader commitment, you've seen we've worked very hard to start, with ourselves in terms of as we build our team, making sure we have a diverse staff that represents what the state looks like. And I'm very proud of the diversity we have on our team, both gender and ethnic, and that is one piece of a commitment to the types of goals that you're talking about. So we will certainly we'll work and figure out how to get at this issue and come back to the board with a report, and if we can propose actions, propose them.
And we should, so that we're never hypocritical, make sure that we're looking at ourselves in that respect also. So I applaud what you've done in building the staff, and we see many, many talented people from across the spectrum, but I want to make sure that people trip into these things sometimes without realizing it. So it's good to take a look.
Absolutely.
Mr. Frank?
I just don't want to put staff on the spot, but before we adjourn, my understanding is next month we're taking the show on the road, and we're going to have a somewhat unusual schedule, so if it's not premature, perhaps Mr. Morales could walk us through that. And as a segue from that, I live in Sacramento, so these meetings, most of which are held, the authority held here in Sacramento, are very convenient for me. I jump on light rail and I'm here in 10 minutes. But this is a statewide board and this is a statewide project, and I would just commend to my colleagues' consideration the idea that we take the show on the road more often and maybe not meet in Sacramento quite as often as we do, and meet in Los Angeles and in the Central Valley and in the Bay Area on occasion to show the flag to our various constituencies around the state.
And Mr. Frank, I've been harping on that for some time. It's a logistical thing because we have notification issues, and I've learned to. I've actually seen one where it's logistics, a lot of logistics. But wherever Skype is around and all these things, and I think we need to be out and around the state, and that includes, San Diego, Los Angeles, Orange County, Anaheim. We need to be around the state. I think it's important that we have FaceTime and presence in the communities.
We have tried, at least in the time I've been on the board, I think we've tried to be in, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, the Central Valley, at least once in each annual cycle. And in fact, I had some interest in trying to see if today's meeting could be in San Francisco, but logistically we weren't able to do it. But I share your sentiment on this. And also, folks from Kings County who are directly affected by this program schlep up here. There's not good transportation, I want to point out. So it's a long trip, and they make it all the time. So we'll be in Fresno next month, which is appropriate because we'll be considering the issues of the Fresno to Bakersfield EIR. And so, and also, Mr. Frank, we've not forgotten your suggestion that we set those meetings up so that they sweep into the evening hours to give working people an opportunity to come before the board, present their issues and concerns as we look at that. So I think both those comments are highly appropriate. Mr. Morales? You just turned your mic off.
I did want to raise an issue, if it's appropriate now, that came up in some of the comments.
I won't know till after you raise it.
I want to make sure, some comments that came up today regarding Buy America and the rolling stock procurement, and I want to make sure I clarify that. Our procurement, which we are pursuing jointly with Amtrak, requires that rail cars be manufactured in the U.S. The issue facing us in that procurement is there are currently no U.S.-based manufacturers building that equipment, or may not be, certainly at least. And so the issue of the waiver is that if we get proposals that require that the first prototype be developed overseas before they have the capacity to build the manufacturing facility here in the U.S., that could be allowed potentially. But the manufacturing of the rolling stock will happen in the U.S. Under the procurement that's required under it. The waiver is only if it's needed in order to get a prototype, in order to evaluate it. Because you can imagine the expense and the issues associated with building a brand new facility.
To build a prototype.
Can't happen overnight in order just to build a prototype. Right. We also have, so under Buy America, that's required to have that content here, but the waiver process is also built into the law to allow for exactly that sort of circumstance. I also just want to point out we have in California, a Buy California provision, which Assemblyman Henry Perea sponsored and the governor signed 2 years ago, I believe it was, which doesn't have the same force of law that the federal Buy America provision has, but clearly has a very strong intent that whatever we can do to bring manufacturing to California, we should do, and that is absolutely our intent with this process. But I did just want to make sure the board understood the cars will be built in the U.S. in compliance with Buy America as we go forward.
Thank you.
Let me just say that
I think that was very appropriate.
I appreciate you sharing that, Jeff, because it is important to our colleagues in the labor community and the folks who've been working very closely with us who are looking forward to the jobs that are going to be coming out as a result of the project. So that's a relief to hear that. And I understand the kind of production and supply chain issues that we're facing, but my interest is to ensure that we're kind of ginning up the industry. We're putting the industry on notice that this is what we have to have, and we're going to be demanding that. So in addition to our SBA and other requirements on the contracting, but that in terms of the procurement of these systems, we're going to have, and by the way, we have a federal requirement. We don't get funds if, in fact, we can't and won't do that.
That's
so I know that we all stand very committed to that. So thank you for the clarification.
And I would just add that it's important to members of Congress. Jeff and I were back briefing the California Democratic delegation probably about a year ago now, it seems. And my friend George Miller from Contra Costa County has a penchant when he feels strongly about something, and Ms. Schenck knows this, having served with him, that he not only can raise his voice, but he has a tendency to want to invade one's personal space. So Congressman Miller was about 6 inches from my face as he was insisting that we better understand that this is a very important aspect of the Stimulus Act money. And I think he spoke, if more forcefully, certainly inclusively for all of his colleagues.
One of the reasons, there are a number of reasons we're pursuing this procurement jointly with Amtrak, but one was to specifically address this issue of creating enough of a market demand to actually justify an investment in the U.S. Were we to go out on our own, that would be a much tougher hurdle to get over for suppliers and manufacturers. So that was part of the intent, was to really ensure that we can comply with the Buy America provisions and see those jobs come here. And, again, although Buy America means literally America, it doesn't mean California necessarily. We're certainly doing what we can to bring manufacturing to California. Supervisor Perea mentioned the meeting in Fresno earlier this week. That's part of a broader effort working with Fresno State to create, in essence, a center of excellence there, so that one of the values of being first in the country is that we get to be on the forefront of developing all of the expertise, whether it be in engineering, whether it be marketing, whatever aspect of a high-speed rail program. And our goal is that we want to be exporting this expertise elsewhere around the country and hopefully around the world as we go forward.
I'll just end with this. I think the best thing we can do is to make sure that there's an accurate translation of the words polar vortex into German, Japanese, Spanish, and these other countries, so they understand the benefit of actually coming to California as opposed to trying to live in these other parts of the country that some of us moved from. With that, the board will enter into closed session to deliberate on the items as listed in the agenda. We'll report back after that, and thank you all very much. Good afternoon. We are returning from closed session, and the board has no items to report from the closed session. With that, the meeting of the High Speed Rail Authority will stand adjourned. Thank you.